Carla, thank you so much for coming to Girl Talk. I've known you for a lot of years now, and I've followed your journey as a nutritionist, athlete, mom. So I was really excited to invite you to our podcast. I wanted to introduce you to our viewers. Do you want to share with us a little bit about your career, how you got started, and some background, where you come from?
How much time do we have? Honestly, it's an honor to be here because I have also seen your journey. I was counting the other day, we're coming close on 10 years, if not more than that. And so to see you grow in your business, and it's been really impressive. But yeah, we met when I was back in college studying nutrition.
Was it that long ago?
Yes. We're aging ourselves here, but I was in college. I started originally doing pre-med, but I realized at some point there, I was having a health issue. I was having migraines a lot, and going through every kind of possible solution to my migraines, I came down to food. It was a couple of foods that were giving me migraines. And so after I took them out of my diet, the migraines just disappeared. No more pills needed. Granted, I still eat those foods. I still get migraines, but I know what causes them. Okay. And so that's what changed for me.
How did you originally decide to study nutrition?
When this was going on, I was in college doing pre-med. The pre-med track is kind of a general, it's just health sciences, chemistries, and all those hard classes, which were making me question if I really wanted to go into medicine. But I always have loved science. And I think it was the first or second year I was having migraines. So because of these migraines that weren't going away, I couldn't take Advil or anything that normally people take to kind of cut off the migraine. I'm allergic to all the NSAIDs, the anti-inflammatories. And so I was really limited. It started to affect my quality of my life. I had a part-time job. I quit. I stopped hanging out with friends because I would always get a migraine in the afternoon. Even my grades were suffering because I couldn't study as much.
From the pain.
Yeah, from the pain. It was just bad. And so at that time, I was also taking an elective, which was world nutrition, which is an amazing professor. I think for a lot of people, oftentimes we can look back in our careers and remember like that one teacher that kind of changed the course of life or inspired something. And that one teacher, and I'll say her name, Dr. Magnus, was that for me. And so when I realized that it was a food that was causing the migraine, that didn't matter how many pills I was taking, if I didn't remove the food or fix my nutrition, nothing would really help it. And then this teacher was very passionate about the way that she taught, but the way that she saw the world through nutrition, or how nutrition influenced things from like not just health, but economics. And so
or economics influence nutrition and vice versa.
True, like how it's more than just what we eat, basically,
yeah.
Right? It opened my eyes to that world of nutrition, and I just made the switch. What's the point of studying medicine if nutrition, I saw it as the basics, like the root of it. For me, medicine was the next level. And so I just made the switch right there and then.
That's amazing. And how long have you been in the field now?
Yeah.
I know that for some time you were working with Baptist. Now you've decided to venture on your own. How long has your journey been to this point?
Yeah, it's been too long. Again, I don't want to age myself, but it's been at least 12 years, I think, since I graduated college. And so from there, I did clinical work. A lot of dietitians, we just naturally go into working at hospitals, but we can do so much more than that. And so working in a hospital, I also realized that I like sports. I think that's how we actually became friends, is through the run clubs. Mm-hmm. And so I started running, swimming, I got into triathlons. And so I got into the world of sports nutrition, which is amazing. It really is. You get to learn what your body can do, but also with the right fuel, because I also made a lot of mistakes. So you can see how nutrition improves your performance. And so ever since then, I've been doing sports nutrition. I worked with Baptist for also 10 years. So it's really been most of my career helping people from like with diabetes, heart disease, to even kids, their parents, navigating picky eating, which now that we both became parents. So I've done a little bit of really everything. Like I was saying, picky eating, sports, chronic disease management, weight loss. And so after about 10 years doing the same thing over and over again, I felt like I wanted to keep growing. And that's when I made the decision to go on my own and start private practice.
You just mentioned picky eating, and that is such a difficult situation to navigate with your children. I don't like to, I swear half of the time I feel like I'm forcing Leo to eat something that he may not want to eat, or at a time he doesn't want to eat. I feel like if it were for him, he would be content without eating, and then when I leave him to kind of decide when he's hungry, then he really eats well because he is really hungry. So sometimes I don't know if I'm just like trying to overfeed, or he's a picky eater. Can you like go a little bit into that?
It's really hard as a parent because listen, as a dietitian, I know the theory, right? I know what works, what doesn't, but then as a parent also, like your feelings get involved, and the amount of time that you spend cooking is also really hard. And we don't want to waste.
Like, I asked for scrambled.
Yeah, it feels like a constant battle, and it shouldn't be. I think the number one thing is mealtime should be positive. If you're fighting with your child, then you need to take a step back, because it should be a positive, a family moment. If not, it can really long term it can be a negative moment for the child, and even talking about eating disorders, or if they really are picky eaters, they will become even more picky eaters, because it's a lot of times not about food, it's about the power struggle. Yeah, you can see how that can get really
because
bad really
I
quick.
really do believe Leo sometimes eats everything, but he doesn't eat as often or as much as I would want him to.
Yeah, so a lot of times it's kind of like being aware or learning, setting realistic expectations. Actually, that's it. Setting realistic expectations. Toddlers, like babies, toddlers, children, do not eat the same portions that we eat, first of all. They don't eat as much as we eat, for sure, but also their appetites change. They don't have a constant, steady appetite that
like
as adults we tend to feel.
Week, I feel. Like
day to day. They can be very hungry for one meal, and then they'll graze the rest of the day, or like eat very little the rest of the day, or the next day. But what's important is, I always tell parents, just two things. One is, your child is a perfect, natural, mindful eater. They eat when they're hungry and they stop when they're full. Whenever there's like a power struggle in between, or fights in between, it could be because A, they're not hungry, or B,
they're satisfied.
Right, so they're satisfied, they don't need more food. Now, they also get very smart. So if they don't like what they're eating, they might say, I don't want more. And then 20 minutes later, they're asking for something. So that's why it's also important for parents to set boundaries and telling your child, like, hey, this is eating time. It's okay if you don't want to eat now. I'm not going to force you. But if you are hungry later, you're not going to get more food.
Yeah.
And
I try to say that.
Yeah, you might say it. But 20 minutes later, when your son's asking you for food, you feel bad, because it's our job as parents to feed our kids. And while that's true, really our responsibility is to provide the food. The child should decide if and how much they eat, right? So, and the second part of that is, if they're asking for food later on, you need to really stick to your guns and say, listen, there's no more food right now. You might probably will see a tantrum, and then maybe move the snack a little bit earlier, or the next meal earlier, but don't give in right off the bat, because they will start to associate, if I don't like my food, my mom's gonna give me snack later.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say.
So a lot of times it's avoiding that, or if you're already there, again, just being more strict with the times. It should be 2 to 3 hours with the foods.
Between a meal and a snack.
Between meals and snacks, yeah. They should eat enough food that they're not hungry for another 2 to 3 hours.
And what about like the variety of what you serve in a meal or in a snack?
Yeah.
I try to keep it like simple so that
it's easy.
Yeah.
Yes. And then they'll get scared.
Especially snacks.
That's the other two. The other thing too is, when they see a lot of food in a plate, they tend to get scared, overwhelmed. So it's always better to start with a small amount, and if they finish it, to offer more, instead of serving a big plate and expecting them to finish it. But you ask about like the basics of the meal, it should be always a carbohydrate. So that could be bread, pasta, rice, always a protein. So whether it's beans or chicken or meat or eggs, ideally a vegetable, like even if it's just one broccoli or one little carrot, especially if they're picky or they've never seen that vegetable, it's always good to just put one on the plate. And that's it, just colorful.
What about instead of a vegetable, a fruit?
It could, it is healthy, it has nutrients, obviously vitamins, minerals, fiber, etc. But the goal with the vegetables and with any food is that it's exposure. Exposure is the number one thing that'll get them to be more open to trying foods, or to trying that one food without the pressure of eating it.
What about parents who decide that they want to give their children sweets, like in their
With the meal?
meals. Yeah, with their meal.
I think that's okay, and that's actually sort of like a new movement to offer the dessert with the meal. I've been personally surprised to see my own daughter, like let's say that we have cupcakes in the house. So one thing is not to always have it. It's not an always food, it's a sometimes food. And if, by some reason you bought cupcakes or candy or somebody gave you and they're at the house and they ask for it especially, put it with a meal. I've always been surprised that my daughter, will not finish that sweet thing that she has on plate, or that she'll still eat the rest. So that's what we want at the end of the day. It's not for them to not eat candy, but it's to also eat the fruits and the vegetables and the grains and like the balanced
I don't
meal.
do it because I'm afraid that if I put it in the plate, that's all he's gonna eat and then not eat anything else. But you're saying like with your daughter.
Do it as a challenge.
Okay.
Do it as a challenge, like just experiment. Like let me see what they actually do. The key here though is to take all the pressure away from that, like, when we do like, but eat a little bit more of that. But just have a bite of this. Like, no, just step away and let them explore the food. Let them explore the plate. I'm telling you, I've been personally surprised.
So if they don't eat the vegetable, we shouldn't tell them like, eat the vegetable? No. Okay.
The work with toddlers is...
Or eat the protein.
No.
Just serve it and let them...
I mean, I think the most thing you can do is kind of like prompt them. Like, hey, the chicken is protein, is good for your muscles. Like, it's gonna make you strong. The vegetable is gonna make you also strong or make you jump. Like, kids associate things to do. Like, I call them like superpowers. Like, what could their body do that they would appreciate? Like, can they play longer? Can they jump higher? Can they... Just associating with daily things that they do more than like health. That doesn't mean anything to them. But yeah, I would say prompt them, not push them, not force them. Everything we're talking about, by the way, I've struggled with because my kids, I have 2 young kids. They've tested me in every single way. And I'm also tested with my family members, like my mom, my mother-in-law, even my husband. Like we were raised just different. What we're talking about today, it's not what we know or how we were raised. So I know it's difficult because it's changing.
I couldn't leave the table until I was finished with my...
Same here. And I don't know about you, but I'm an overeater. I will like naturally feel this pressure to finish the plate, even when my stomach's telling me I'm painfully full. I'm like, but there's 2 more bites in there. I need to finish them. That's kind of what we're trying to change with this mindful eater approach, is offer the healthy food. So always a protein, a vegetable, fruit, carbs, but let them decide how much.
Okay.
What we decide is when they eat and
what we're gonna serve.
Okay. And the place too. That's also important because a lot of parents will put it like an iPad or TV on to get them to eat more because when they're distracted, they'll just open their mouths like. And like the parent will be happy because they're finishing their meal, but the child is completely unaware of, they're not actually doing the work of what they're eating or how much they're eating. So that's actually gonna backfire later on. Listen, I know that everything I'm saying, it's easier said than done. A lot of times when I talk to parents, it takes like about 2 weeks of like coaching them to get them, to stay strong, because I might tell you do this, but it's not one time. It's until it works. It will work, but it might take a month or 2. And I don't know if I mentioned this, but with kids, a lot of like the most important work, it's in them being exposed to that food more than eating it.
Okay.
If we're talking about a toddler, like baby to 5-year-old, 6-year-old that has never seen a specific food or has not seen it frequently, it's just exposure, seeing it, touching it, seeing other people eat it. I don't know if I share this, but on my Instagram at least, it was last year. So my daughter is right now 4. She was 4 years old before she actually had salad, which to me, it's one of the basics. Like you eat salad, it's one of the healthy things to eat. She would eat broccoli and carrots, etc., but not raw leaves, which I understand why it's gross that you would want to eat it, right? But I never pressured her. I would always ask her she would always see me eating it, and I would always ask her when I could to help me make it. Like, hey, can you break it? Can you add dressing? Can you mix it? All of a sudden, super randomly, she was like, Mommy, I want to try some of your salad.
Yeah.
And now she loves it. And I'm shocked. And here's the last thing that I'll say about like nutrition and kids is, as parents, we have to be cool about it. Does that make sense? Like, because she ate the salad, I couldn't celebrate it. If you celebrate it in front of her, I mean, maybe like, okay, I'm proud that you ate something that you like, but if you make too big of a deal, depending on how old the child is, they might even rebel against it. Okay. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like, we need to be completely like, cool. I don't care if you eat it. I don't care if you do. Like, it's there if you want
I'm
it.
thinking to myself, all the times that I don't follow your advice.
Well, we haven't really sat down and talked about it, so.
Wow.
But yeah, when you show
so
too much
challenging
interest,
culturally, like you said, we were
not culturally, generationally.
Yeah.
It's across. Like I think I've talked to different people from other parts of the world, and it happens in other countries too.
Okay.
It's a whole generation. Okay. So don't feel bad.
Even when I first had Leo and baby weaning was definitely already a thing, I had such a hard time with it because of the portion, like wanting him to eat more. And he was always like, he would eat very little. He still is very satisfied with a little amount.
With a small amount, yeah. I think something that I tell parents to reassure themselves that they're on the right track is if your child is growing, maintaining, gaining weight, growing in height, that's enough for them. That's it. Mm-hmm. You need to worry when they go to the pediatrician, and obviously they start to go like just once a year after like 3 or 4.
And like if they're not in the curve.
Right. If they stay within their curve, that's fine. You don't need to be pushing more food on them. Mm-hmm. They really are the perfect natural eaters if we guide them. If we ask them, how does your belly feel? Is it full or is it empty? Do we need more food? What do you think? Like guiding them through that process is key. Just respecting when he tells you, I don't want any more, that's fine. But then setting the boundary and not give in to the snack within an hour.
And what about right after? So Leo will finish his meal. He'll say he's done. And then like last night, he actually had a great dinner. And then he wanted bread, like after we were finished eating. It's okay as long as like it's still happening. Like it's just one more thing he wanted.
Yeah, I guess it depends on like, he had a good meal?
Yeah.
Oh, then yeah, absolutely. Okay. Then I wouldn't worry. It's if he didn't eat.
And then he's asking for
he's asking for something else, then you know that he might overcompensate and learn that as a strategy to get what he wants.
Okay. Well, now I wanted to ask you, what are some fundamental principles of nutrition that you feel like everyone should know and try to follow?
So I'll go to the basics. This is something that I repeat over and over again in my office is everyone's meal should always have a carbohydrate, a protein, and vegetables. It doesn't have to be raw or cooked, doesn't matter, but a vegetable there. Whichever protein, plant-based or animal, and then the carbohydrate, ideally with fiber. But again, the carb, the protein, the vegetables, that's how a dietitian thinks. Like that's what we call a balanced meal. The amount that's gonna change depending on the person's goal, any chronic diseases, or their lifestyle, like if they're more active or less active, but that's the basics. Everybody's meal should start with that. And I don't mention fat in case somebody's wondering, because usually fat, we'll find it in the protein or it's added in the cooking or in the dressing with the salad. So that it's not something that we have to think about where, is it there or not? But even at a restaurant, we can think about what's gonna be my carb, what's gonna be my protein, and how can I add vegetables to my meal.
And do you have any preference of, like you just said, it could be raw but what about like organic, processed foods? Like what should we be like 90% of our foods be?
Yeah, I mean plants.
Okay.
Ideally plants. Now organic, that's a different conversation, whether it's organic or conventional. Meaning that does that plant usually, was it grown using synthetic fertilizers and pesticides or natural ones? And that's where a lot of the debate is now. When it comes to overall health, we know that, it's not that I don't want to say it doesn't matter, but what matters the most is if you are eating plants or not. That's what's gonna make the biggest difference, right? And I say that
for
because—
health or weight?
For health. For organic and conventional will not affect your weight. Yeah, okay. Will not affect your, if we're talking about hormone disruptors and maybe down the line, like not much of a significant difference compared to if you're eating plants or not plants. Okay. Yeah, or overeating calories overall. For weight, I'm talking about health, preventing chronic diseases like heart disease, diabetes, different types of cancer even. The whole organic debate, I think a lot of people, have organic food here. Like obviously it has like a halo kind of effect. It is healthier in general, but if this is where it comes down to, if you're not eating vegetables because they're not organic, then it is unhealthy, right? Okay. The healthy thing is to eat more foods, whether they're organic or more plant foods, whether they're organic or not. The whole organical conversation though, if it's organic or not, there have been associations, and that's where nutrition research unfortunately gets really tricky, and I can't for sure say yes, it leads to disease or it prevents disease, is because everything in nutrition research, unless it's in a lab and really controlled, it's association. So we know that people that eat organic food tend to be healthier. Mm-hmm. But why? right? Is it the organic food? Is it the like natural versus synthetic fertilizer? Or is it the fact that they go to the doctor every year? That they have health
maybe
insurance,
they have
most
other,
likely.
Or maybe they have other life practices and that's why they choose organic.
Yeah, usually when you look at the demographic of people that value and buy organic food, they have a higher economic power, like more education as well, so they know what are healthier foods versus others. They can buy those healthy foods, so they tend to buy more vegetables, more fresh foods in general than processed foods. And so that's where the gap starts to like really increase. And so it's hard to tell, yes, if you eat organic foods, you will be healthier. I like to bring it to the most simple, basic level, which is, are you eating vegetables? Yes. Can you afford organic whenever possible? Then yes, it's kind of like health insurance in a way. You have it, hoping that nothing's ever going to happen, but it's also not a definitive. Doesn't mean that you will or will not get sick, unfortunately.
One topic that I feel is also super controversial is GMO versus non-GMO.
Yeah.
There's people who say GMO is not good for you.
Yeah,
and then there's many people who say there hasn't been tests showing that. Can you share your...
Yes, and we might get a lot of questions with this because it is a very controversial topic. So first of all, GMOs are genetically modified organisms, right? It means that at the genetic level, there was a gene that was enhanced or suppressed to give an effect. The most basic example that I can think of right now is like, because a lot of farmers like have done this, anything that we grow, they've done this. By the way, this has been done like centuries before. You can naturally do it, like crossbreed. Like you get two seeds and then you get a new plant, right? So we originally started doing it for pest resistance. So like if you have a corn, that it would resist that pest, not die out on the farmer losing a lot of money. And so now you have more crops, you can actually sell them. A lot of people think that GMOs are everywhere and anywhere, and they're not. In fact, only in the United States, I think we have like maybe a handful, like I want to say 3 to 5 products that are genetically modified, meaning that there's a gene there that wasn't originally from that seed, from the original seed. The problem is that corn is one of them, and corn is used for a lot of things as well within our American diet. So that's where it gets tricky. But I'll just tell you this, because this is at least my stand. I've tried doing research, but as you can imagine, it's really hard because even with organic food and genetically modified organisms, we don't have an immediate response or effect. Again, everything is correlationally. People that consume more of these foods tend to have more diseases.
So there has been a correlation.
With GMOs, you know what? Not exactly sure. The only thing I can tell you is that it takes decades to develop. So GMOs are like, at least in the sense of having been done in a lab, maybe a few decades. We don't have a lot of research on that to see long-term health effects. So something that a lot of people, if you're looking to buy organic and GMO-free products, now you don't have to look for individual seals like on the label. Now every product as of 2020, this is like a new FDA change. As of 2020, the product has the USDA organic seal. It also means that it's GMO-free, okay? So for the people that are looking for that, that's kind of like a lifesaver because now you don't have to do a lot of work reading labels. My personal stand on GMO products really comes from a professor that I had in college. When I was doing my master's, I took a whole class on nutrigenomics, so how food affects your genes and your genes receive, right, or are affected by those nutrients. And so what she said about GMOs was that the genes of foods do not change our genes. What changes our genes or turns them what we call epigenetics, so it's kind of like a code above our genes that turns on or off certain genes, is nutrients themselves. So vitamin C, folic acid, calcium, vitamin D, nutrients turn on or off genes in our makeup, but the genes in plants don't change that. So whether that plant was genetically modified does not have any effect on our personal genes.
And typically, even if they still have the same nutrients as another plant.
That's the thing. When they're organic, right, they've done the nutritional comparison between organic and conventional. A lot of times they have about the same amount of vitamin C. So it's not a significant difference to say if you buy organic, it will have more nutrition. No. What affects the nutrition of food is the soil that it's grown on. A lot of times the soil is depleted already on nutrients, and so that changes, or parts of the world, and that changes, but not necessarily, it won't affect our genetic makeup, which I think it should give a lot of people peace to know that nutrition shouldn't be that as complicated as a lot of influencers out there or supplement companies are trying to make it, because of course there's a lot of money to be made in supplements, and organic food does have a higher cost. That's why
let's touch on supplements.
What about supplements?
Do you think we should be going to supplements for basic things that we know are good to keep us healthy, like zinc, vitamin C? What are some other ones? Vitamin D, for example. Like, should we be taking these supplements, or are we okay getting them from our food?
Yeah. So I always say supplements are to supplement your diet. So if you're not getting a nutrient from your food, I try to help my patients meet it through foods, right? Like, let's go back to the basics. But I think that also comes with understanding if you are deficient or not, because even if you're eating, let's say, a lot of dairy, that doesn't mean that you're actually, you have enough calcium or vitamin D in your body. You might not be absorbing it. That's where we all are different. So I do recommend people checking in with their doctors, asking for a comprehensive nutrient analysis test once a year, especially if the person's plant-based, vegetarian, or vegan, where there tends to be more deficiencies, just to see. Because
so if your blood test comes back normal, you don't have any deficiencies, should you just continue living life without taking supplements?
Why? I mean, the worst thing that can happen is that it doesn't help. You're just wasting money. The best thing that happens is that it actually is health protective. So that's why I'm careful not to say to a person, like, don't take this supplement. But I'm also very conscious that it is an extra step in your daily ritual or routine, that if you can put that energy and time and money into eating more vegetables another way, or having more balanced meals, or even exercising, which has nothing to do with nutrition but still is healthy or helpful, I'd rather that person focus on that instead of having this long list of supplements.
You're right, because sometimes just buying supplements can add up to a few $100s.
It's a lot of money. That
if it's like doing that versus like a gym subscription, you're saying skip the supplements, do the gym subscription.
Yeah, I mean, there's basic ones where I don't care if the person's taking it or not. Like, vitamin D is generally healthy. Most of us are deficient in vitamin D, or on the lower side, even if it's normal. There's a lot of discussion in the medical community that, like, what's normal is not optimal. So I also get that. But if you're gonna start taking a supplement, wouldn't it be a good idea to see what your baseline is in your blood, to then see if that supplement actually helped?
Yeah,
right?
Sure.
Like, I'll tell you,
track it.
Exactly. I'll tell you, I've always been deficient in vitamin D. And so I check it every single year, and I'll recommend people to do it. It doesn't have an additional cost if you have health insurance, but you can actually see how the supplement starts to increase it. So you know that your money's going somewhere versus just, kind of throwing it in the air and hoping that it helps. But more than that, my thing is, if you're doing the extras, but the basics are not there, like there's holes or gaps in the basics of health, then what are you really doing? Is it really healthy? Let's start in the basics, and then we add on. I have a lot of people that I start working with them. They have that healthy, balanced plate. They've been able to lower their cholesterol or whatever, lose some weight, whatever the goal is. And then we start thinking about, okay, let's maybe, do vitamin D just as a boost, or let's do omega-3, which is also helpful for even athletes just in recovery. Now, one thing,
hair, nails,
skin, right? Everything. What I am really big on is not taking that supplement forever.
Okay.
If you're gonna do it for 3 months, stop for a while, and then start again. There's no benefit to be gained beyond that if you just do it every single day.
What if you just do it, instead of taking breaks like that, you do 1 day on, 1 day off?
Yeah.
Instead.
You could do that. I think what's also helpful to think is, okay, you're doing that, but are you eating your omega-3 from foods? Like, how can we get that same thing that you're getting in the pill? Can we get it from salmon or from tuna or from the seeds? Just to really show that person that it is possible, that it's doable. They don't have to rely on that pill forever.
I also know that supplements are popular for, probiotics are really popular, and people, will go to a probiotic when they might not be feeling their best. And we discussed this a little bit, how gut health is really important as well. Yeah. What do you have to say about gut health and probiotics?
So probiotics are live bacteria, right? That we all have in our guts, we have in our guts. Probiotic foods are foods that are fermented to have those live bacteria. So I do recommend people adding more of those. When we're talking about supplements, though, that's a different conversation, because I know a lot of people are taking it like every day, forever and ever, as like health coverage, health insurance. I get that it gives you peace of mind, but it might not be giving any benefit, really. The science is not there yet to say that probiotic supplements do help improve your microbiome composition beyond a certain benefit. What I mean by that is that, again, if you're not eating enough fiber, right, you're not really getting the benefit, because that healthy bacteria, they need fiber. So even if you're getting the supplement, are you getting enough fiber to keep them growing and happy and, you know, thriving? I did do a lot of research in this topic back, I want to say like 4 or 5 years ago when I did my master's. It was on sports nutrition, but my thesis was on gut health. And so I dove deep into every single study that you can imagine. So up until 2020, I know every single study that's out there related to gut health and just health in general. And I can tell you that probiotics was not mentioned or studied in every single one. The number one factor to improve your microbiome, your gut microbiome, is fiber, period. So there's no supplement that's gonna have enough power, or the power that fiber does, to keep the healthy bacteria that we already have in there growing and thriving. So what that looks like is, can you add more fruit to your diet? Can you add the grains that you're eating, the rice? Can you make your brown? Can you add more beans, more lentils? The specific study that I did, I took basically like 30 kids, 30 young athletes, and I studied their stools for 3 times during a 2-week period. And what I found was that the kids that were eating at least 25 grams of fiber a day, they had significantly higher of several bacteria, but you know, at least like the main healthy ones that we were looking at, or that we were looking to study, it really changed drastically from baseline to increasing their fiber intake. And those that didn't eat the 25 grams of fiber, which is a daily recommendation, didn't have that bacterial diversity, which means like a lot of different types of, a lot of different species, or the amounts. So how much of those species. So that kind of validates the recommendation that we currently have, which is 25 grams of fiber per day if you're a woman, 35 if you're a man, 38 if you're a man.
How would you know, what are some common symptoms that your microbiome
is off? Yeah. Number one is your stool. I always ask people in that when they come to my office as part of my initial consult, like, bowel movements, how are they? So I ask them, are you going to the bathroom every day? You should be going to the bathroom every day. If not, how can we increase your fiber or the water, or adding probiotic foods to your diet to help improve that? And the second thing is, what's the consistency? A lot of people are used to living in this like constipated world where like where they go to the bathroom every day, but it's like rocks every time they go, or it's really painful, or maybe a little bit of blood here and there. It shouldn't be like that. It should really look like a sausage. And I know this is like TMI and people get super uncomfortable when I talk about this, but again, I studied this so much that to me it's like, you know, how are you feeling? How's your poop? It should be like a sausage. It should be like one piece, soft, and daily.
Okay.
If it's too soft on the other side, or if it's floating, that's a sign of fat malabsorption. That tells us that on either side of the spectrum, there's issues. There's something that we can work out.
What is it if it's soft?
Too soft, like floating in the water.
What could it be?
Fat malabsorption.
Okay.
So maybe like a food intolerance or an allergy, or I mean, there's so many things, or just not enough fiber too, because fiber is what makes it bulk up. So too much fiber will create constipation, especially if your intestine's not used to it, or you're not drinking enough water. And then too little fiber can give you like loose stools, which is not ideal.
And then what about someone who has an unhealthy gut? What are some common symptoms? Aside from how do they normally feel?
Yeah, I mean, the tricky part is that some of the symptoms are very like just too generalized. Like it could be fatigue, lack of energy, it could be headaches, it could be bloating. Yeah, so bloating and gas are really the number. Anything GI will be number one, obviously being affected by the gut. There's other symptoms like the ones that I mentioned that are a little trickier to define and to even realize that they have them.
What was it that was causing you the migraines?
It was gluten.
So bad gut health also gives you migraines, you said?
Well, it's very interesting that you say that, because something that I get as well when I eat gluten is fat malabsorption. Okay. So I don't absorb the fats, and so I can see it in the toilet pretty much. And so I've learned to navigate that. I know when I had something with gluten or not. Mind you, I am gluten intolerant. I don't have celiac, so I can eat some gluten and experience some discomfort, whereas somebody with an allergy, celiac disease, even like a particle can send them into the bathroom with diarrhea. So it's different in that sense. But what I say, so bloating and gas, is normal. If it's too much, if it's affecting your quality of life, if you feel like you're bloated all the time, then that's a problem. It might be something that you're eating or not eating, or...
How could you find out?
A lot of times is, lactose is like the number one thing that I find a lot of people are lactose intolerant and they just haven't really accepted it yet, or they think they're avoiding it because they switched to almond milk, but they're still getting lactose or dairy some other way. Kind of like food challenges. I do that a lot. We talk about removing that food for like 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and then challenging the body, doing like a high dose of that food again to see how it affects them.
It shouldn't.
Right. If they're not intolerant or there's no problem, it shouldn't affect them.
Yeah.
If it does, they'll find really quick, fast. And so it's like kind of like that answer. But honestly, I always start with just adding more plant foods. Like, can you add more vegetables? Can you add healthy fats? Salmon twice a week, maybe. And then if they're not, unless they tell me that they're lactose intolerant, I'll consider adding Greek yogurt because that is a natural probiotic. Other probiotic foods are things like tempeh, which is fermented soy, kimchi, fermented cabbage, kombucha, fermented. You get the point. Yeah. Everything's fermented here. But it has a caveat there because if you eat too many of the probiotic foods, it can also give you bloating and gas and like it's uncomfortable. So you have to start slow.
What are some simple dietary habits that people can adopt in their everyday?
Number one is eat more plant foods. So what does that look like? Just more salad, more vegetables. Just, it doesn't have to be fancy, it doesn't have to be complicated. Just one thing can you add? Not to all your meals, just think about one. So starting small, and we put that as a habit. Just whatever change you make it very small. So one vegetable, one meal a day, that's it. That's really the most impactful at improving gut health, at losing weight, at feeling more energized. It has a lot of power. The second would be typically adding more protein, especially if you're a woman, especially if you're over the age of 35. Just, can you add more protein to your meals?
Okay.
I always recommend 20 grams of protein.
Okay.
The more the better, but starting at 20 grams per day. Carbs, we like to blame carbs for our weight gain. Usually it has something to do with the carbs, but it's not the carb per se, but it's just how much. So cutting the carbs down to, I would say like 25% of the plate. That could be from half a cup for most women to 2 cups for men and a very active person. That depends, but just looking at the carbohydrates and cutting down a little bit. And that includes obviously added sugars, number one. I like to ask people, can you put a number to how many times or how many of this food do you eat? Like sodas, can you put a number in the last week? How many times did you drink soda? 10. Can you cut it back to 7, right? So usually like that happy medium will let the person like try to achieve it, like want to achieve it, but it's not so drastic that they'll do it for a week and then never come back to see me again.
So don't eliminate, neither add nor subtract anything from your diet too drastic.
So exactly. So don't restrict too drastically. Don't do anything too much too soon, unless it's like a medical condition, like a medical scare. I've talked to people that, they had a stroke and all of a sudden like they want that 360-degree life change, and they tend to be better at doing it because it happened to them. But for most people, that approach doesn't work. So just starting small. But yeah, so adding more vegetables in general, cutting down the carbs, increasing the protein. And then last, this is not food related, but it's sleep. Because a lack of, like when you don't sleep well, A, your blood sugar tends to be higher, even if you don't have diabetes. And B, we tend to overeat because that's also another source of energy for the body. Sleep is recharging energy. Eating is also energy. So a lot of times when people are like grazing throughout the day or hungry day, and I ask them about their sleep and they tell me, maybe I sleep 6 hours, but I wake up 3 times in between, then it's not really quality of sleep. So I've been actually pleasantly surprised when people, for the people that I've worked with that improve their sleep, all of a sudden their blood sugar goes down. All of a sudden they're eating less. Obviously they have more energy because they're actually sleeping, but they're also eating less. So I never underestimate the power of sleep when it comes to the influence that it has with nutrition. Yeah.
Thank you, Carla.
No, happy to be here. Love it.
Was there anything else that you want to share with us to wrap up?
No, just honestly, don't get your nutrition information online. Look at who you're following online.
Where can we follow you? How can we work with you? How can we work with you? What services do you offer?
Everything's on my Instagram. Honestly, that's been like the one place where you can get to know me. You'll get to see a lot of how I work.
I love your stories. You make your field so fun and interesting to learn through your Instagram.
Thank you. That means a lot because I get that science in general is confusing, especially when you have this much information.
I really love your quizzes.
Oh, the quizzes.
It's so fun.
Yeah,
I really do learn.
I try to make the complicated information very simple. I know that there's a lot of professionals that go into like the deep science and the extra supplements, but I find that most people don't have the basics right. So if I can help them achieve at least that, that's a step in a healthier direction. So yeah, everything's on my Instagram for appointments, everything is there.
You're now working where?
So I'm working with Dr. B. He's a chiropractor here in Miami, in Brickell. An amazing person, really health-minded, I would say like well-rounded. So he won't just look at like your knee, he'll look at your entire body to see where the problem is coming. We really align a lot of nutrition issues. As you can imagine, like a person recovering from an injury can benefit from nutrition. And same thing, I work with nutrition, but for a lot of people, it's also how do we get you more active? And so he can help those people. So yeah, it's been a great collaboration.
Amazing, good. I'm so happy for you that you decided to venture out and do that, because I think you have all the skills and the talent to work with people. So I'm really excited for this new venture for you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for being with us today.
Loved it. This was a lot of fun.
We'll do it another time.